Okay, hi everyone. My name is Raz Godelnik. I'm an assistant professor of strategic design and management here at Parsons, the new school, and I'm very excited to be here. I'll try to be talk not too much and try to be not boring. So let's start. Thank you. Let's start with the fact that we face a climate crisis that requires immediate and bold action. Only earlier this week, there was another report signed up by 11,000 scientists from around the world asking or declaring a climate emergency. Interestingly, earlier today, Greta Thunberg tweeted reminding ourselves that only a year ago we had another report with 20,000 scientists asking also to declare a climate emergency and basically asking, do we need more reports to tell us that we're in a state of climate emergency? And probably the answer is no. Well, one of the leading scientists that was leading the current report said that we're asking for transformative change for humanity. And I think we all can agree about that. I think we all can agree also that we know what to do. I think that the challenge really is how do we do it? And this is, I think, where we connect the dots between the challenge and platform co-ops and the great inspiring examples that we saw here. So one question that I would ask is, what is it that we really need? I think one thing is we need change agents. And it's clear that, just look around you. This room, this movement is full of change agents. I think we need visionaries, not just people that could imagine a better future, but also people that will help us imagine a better future. If you think about, if I'll ask you to close your eyes and ask you to imagine what an unsustainable world looks like, it's very easy. Soon we have Black Friday. That's all you need to think about. But if I ask you to close your eyes and imagine what the sustainable world looks like, that's pretty difficult. And this is, I think, again, where platform co-ops provide us with very clear, vivid image of what this world could look like. We also look for people that will shape the cultural change. I think this is very much what we're facing, what we need. We need to acknowledge the fact that this is a cultural war. And so we need people that will help us to change the culture in which we live. And again, I think this is where platform co-op can be a good fit. Final point is that we need to overcome what I call the red zone, green zone gap. And what do I mean by that? So basically, scientists suggest that we are in a state of emergency, but for most people, this is not the case. So in a way, scientists tell us that we're in the red zone, right, with severe risk. But for most people, probably maybe not in this room, but go outside, and for most people, we're still in the green zone, which means that we're in a low-risk situation. And so the question, for most people, it's really about the issues that they care about, our healthcare and the state of the economy and employment and security and so forth. And so I think, for example, when I saw the presentation of Kataki, it's so interesting to see that we have, and I think this is true for many platform co-ops, that these platform co-ops are touching people's life in their with the issues that matter for them. They are looking and working on pursuing solutions that are very relevant to the highest priorities of people, again, with issues that relate to their economic security. We heard about employment and so forth, very basic issues. And I think this is where I find also opportunities in connecting the dots, again, between that level, that this is the scientist warnings and people's life. And I think we have this opportunity to connect the dots here. Now, if I mean, we saw many challenges here. I think that the last video that we saw, the speaker talked about really how do we build better platforms, and I think we all want to build better platforms, right? But how do we do it? And then, I mean, again, thinking about the fact that we all know that we're in a crisis. There's there's a difference between knowing and doing. So it's also difficult, I think, to translate it when it comes to the understanding that I think we all shared, that, as the speaker in the last video said, right, that we're basically platform co-ops are a good business model. I think we all acknowledge that, but the question is, can we translate this understanding of platform co-op as a good business model also to financial viability, also to the ability to sustain yourself for the long term. And this is where I think we need to consider what the role of climate change could be. Because in a way, if I'll come to the Mobilitat and Katak, and I tell them, hey, maybe it's time to emphasize more, what you can do about climate change and so forth. They maybe say, we have enough on our plate. We already, struggle with, very, with the very many other critical issues that we need to look at. But I think the challenge, and this is also the opportunity, is how do we take climate change and these critical environmental issues and change them or transform them from a liability to an asset, right? Because if you think about how do you compete against, right, the other regular companies, right, or regular platforms that perhaps don't share the same values and the same visions. I think, I mean, eventually we look at this almost like a Venn diagram where we need to think about how do we find that sweet spot, right, where we're considering what the world needs in terms of environmental and social impacts, when we consider what, I mean, your customers need, and we have to acknowledge that. I mean, eventually it's also about your customers and also the people that you engage, and also what is needed to develop your platform, your brand in a way. And I think for that matter, this is where, climate change could become an opportunity that will help you to better compete, because I think you're already grounded in values and in a vision and thinking that is very much aligned with what we need to do, unlike many other companies that perhaps don't have that sense and find greater tension between maximizing profits and taking care of these issues. One thing that I want to say, for example, is that we also need to challenge ourselves, right? We talk about how do we move from business as usual to, thinking about in terms of sustainability and so forth. But I think we also maybe need to consider how do we move from, I would call it platform co-op as usual, right? Because if we all agree that we're in a state of an emergency, right, and we need to operate with urgency, it requires really to think about how do we make better, how do we work better, and how do we work with a framework that will help us to be more impactful. And I think one thing, it's really about coalition building, right? If we think about, again, how do we change the culture? How do we change the state of mind of people and companies and politicians? It's really about building coalitions, not just between, just like we saw with the different the collaboration between mobility co-ops, right? It's also about how do we build coalitions with regulators and activists, right? And in a way, becoming part of this movement. I think that we have to be part of this movement because I think A, it's a good fit, and B, it's also, I think, important to think about our, competitive advantage. It's really, I mean, that's part of thinking about and embracing the challenge is really part of what platform co-ops are and should be about. And it requires also sometimes, I mean, when thinking about thinking in terms of the connections, again, when the scientists talk about, right, global issues and global challenges, I think platform co-ops are looking at the local level, right? They look at the individual level. I think they can make the connections, because otherwise we'll still be, left with more and more reports that tell us that, the end of the world is coming, and we're here just, struggling with our own life until, eventually we find ourselves in a struggle that becomes more and more difficult. And I think the way in which the platform co-ops could make a difference, could help move the needle. I mean, it's not just about platform co-ops, but I think platform co-op could be about, part of this movement is really about creating that connections, right, between regulators and activists and other innovators that are really trying to make a difference. And I think it also requires really thinking about, for example, connections with large companies, right? With Kataki, it was about, the polluters, right? In a way, it's also about eventually, right, working with companies to challenge, why do we live in a world where, where we have bottles that are designed for single use, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? 20,000 bottles per second are translated to almost 500 billion bottles, single-use bottles a year. That's crazy, and that doesn't make any sense in a regular world, not to say in a world that is in a climate emergency. And I think this is where platform co-ops could play an important role, both in terms of working with polluters to create solutions that are more circular, that make more sense in terms of shifting to new materials and new business models, but also in terms of pushing, I think, in also pushing them in terms of understanding that if they don't do what is right, they may lose the social license to operate. So in closing, I would say that I think that this is a moment that we need to make a choice, right? Either we say we embrace the challenge of climate change and we become one of we want to be the part of not just part of the movement, but at the forefront of this movement. Or we can say we continue with where we are with, the great progress that we make, and eventually it will add up. I think we really need to decide if we want to be part of the leaders of this change, or are we just going to be more of, I would say, sort of technicians that are embracing changes but not necessarily shaping them. And I think this is definitely a moment to make that choice. Thank you.